without further ado, Harlan, who is the director at Fairway Mortgage for all of Fairway, right? For the reverse mortgage section of it. I probably did not do you justice, but I appreciate you coming on and teaching us all about it. But tell us about yourself.
Well, I've been doing mortgages longer than some people have probably been alive on this deal. So I'm an old guy, we can see with my white hair. And so I've been through a few cycles. I bought my first house, first big investment, when I was 19 years old. Interest rates, 1981, 16.5%. I just had my son buy a house and he was whining about 2.75 because he knew that some people got a 2.5. I said, shut up and close. I'll tell you about my 16.5%. So been through a lot of different cycles in the real estate business and a lot of different products, from everything from USDA and rental loans, hard money loans. And about 18 years ago, I got involved in the reverse mortgage industry and started doing them myself. I've closed over 1,000 of them personally, so I know a lot about them from a just logistical standpoint. And then I joined Fairway. Our entire team merged with Fairway 6 years ago, and I became the national reverse mortgage director. So I trained about 1,000 loan officers across the country, from literally Florida to the other side of the Puget Sound in Washington, and from San Diego all the way up to Portland, Maine. So I've seen a lot of the real estate markets, very fascinating. And I work with financial planners and realtors, our partners, every day. I talk to, I don't know, maybe, well, there's about we had a big meeting yesterday, about 600 financial advisors. So that's where I spend most of my time. And my goal is to help you increase your business. Yes, you're going to get a CE class, but if that's all you get out of it, I really failed. We want to make sure, and as Terry said, we want to make sure this is interactive. So even for those of you that don't have your videos on, as long as you are clothed above the waist, and as is anyone that's with you is clothed above the waist, just click the video on. I really appreciate that. Makes it easier when I'm presenting. But I want to make sure that you stop me along the way and ask questions. I want to make this fun, interesting. But most of all, if you follow what I tell you to do, because I've done similar programs like this so many times, you will find your business, your income increasing by 30%. That is the typical that I hear back from real estate agents that I've talked to over the years, is this was a big increase. So if you are afraid of paying more taxes because you're going to get more commissions, you should sign off right now, because I'm going to give you some information that's going to help you out here. Okay. First of all, I will, let's see, this is 3 hours, right, Terry? We go until about 11 o'clock tonight?
Well, yeah. No, you're good for 50 minutes. So,
all right. So we will roll, and
you can go the whole hour. It's up to you.
Okay. It depends on what we got for questions. I can tell my stuff pretty quickly, but I will pull up and this is not going to be, don't get freaked out, this is not going to be one of these boring PowerPoint things, because I just use the slides to kind of jog the memories and bring up some funny things once in a while. So the first thing that I want to start out with is reverse mortgages have kind of a little bit of a bad name in some areas. What is it? And you can either unmute yourself or type into the chat box, whichever is easier. What don't you like about reverse mortgage? What have you heard about them? What's kind of like, I don't know if I'd recommend it to my mom or my grandma, or I don't know if I'll get one when I get older. What's some of your response when we would hear about that? And don't everybody talk at once. I can't hear you.
I remember, actually, Harlan, not to be the only one speaking, but I remember when I was a realtor, it did have a bad name, because people thought that, oh gosh, they were going to take all their money out of grandma's house, and then there was going to be, she was going to be left high and dry with nothing. So it's really not that way anymore, though, I understand, right?
Well, it's not, but part of it is just simply the understanding, because most people think that you lose your house. A lot of real estate agents deal with people that are selling their house, young people that inherited a house, and there's not nearly as much equity left as they thought there was. And so they thought, just like I did when I started 18 years ago, I used to tell people, whatever you do, don't ever get a reverse mortgage because it rips off the old people and screws the kids. So stay away from them. I could not have been further from the truth. So I got invited one winter in January. Of course, I lived in Wisconsin at the time. And I got an invite to a reverse mortgage seminar in Miami. If you live in Wisconsin and you get an invite to any seminar in Miami in January, you just go. You don't care what it's about. And so I went. Very, very skeptical, and it changed my life. I understood that I was wrong about reverse mortgages. I was wrong about the whole thought process of how mortgages worked, even though I was a mortgage lender for a long time before that, and really woke me up. And since that time, of course, I've helped thousands of people personally and through Fairway. And my parents had a reverse mortgage. My wife's parents have a reverse mortgage now. I did one for my sister. I'm 61 years old, so I can get one next year. And I am excited, way more excited about that than getting the vaccine. That's something I'm all fired up about, is getting a reverse mortgage. Most people, that's not their dream to get a reverse mortgage. They think it's a bad thing. And yet we know that it dramatically improves it. So I'm going to ask you a very important question. Do all of you, I just heard a little bit about, the house flipping thing or the rental thing. Do you guys think that real estate overall is a good investment? Would anybody say no? We think it's a bad investment? Yeah. No, everybody thinks everything's a good investment, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
In reality, let's talk about
Absolutely.
Retirement. Let's talk about whether or not your house is a good investment for retirement. This is really strange, but this is how I woke up to understand it. Now, if you buy that 4-unit and you get income off from it for a while, and then you sell it down the road and make a bunch of money on it and pay some capital gains, but you make a bunch of money on it, you would call that a good investment. What about the house that you live in? Is that a good investment? What happens when you're 70 years old and you need money? You just pull money out of the wall. You just start using it. A house is an entirely, and you're going to think this is really strange coming from me, a house that you live in is a horrible investment unless you're going to plan on a reverse mortgage the day you turn 62. It is a horrible investment. It is worthless. 100% worthless. And if you don't believe me, I've got a $100 bill here that represents equity. This is a real $100 bill. This is a fake $100 bill. Okay. And this is home equity. And it looks like a $100 bill, but you turn it around and you realize it's just one of these little stress things. It's an advertising specialty and it's worth maybe $2. And so I challenge you, if you think your house is worth something, your paid off house, or your mom and dad's paid off house, or your grandpa and grandma's paid off house, take a picture of that. Let's say it's $1 million house. Take a picture of it, and I'll give you one of these, and you go down to the grocery store and get a couple bags of groceries. Go get a new roof. Go use this to just buy a tank of gas. It's worthless. You will get absolutely nothing out of it, and they will ask you for a credit card or some real money. It is worthless. So people over and over, I'll say, well, I just talked to somebody, my son just bought a house here in the suburbs of Minneapolis, and we talked to a guy over his back fence, and that is his brand new neighbor. And I said, hey, Larry, when did you move in here anyhow? Oh, 40 years ago, I moved in here. I said, how much you pay for your house anyway? He said, $40,000, brand new. And I said, wow, that's pretty cool, because right now it's worth about $500,000. But it's worthless to him until, in fact, he's going through a divorce right now and he needs money to pay off his wife. Where's he going to get the money? Well, if he understands reverse mortgages, as I can help him out with, he can pull money out of his house and pay off his ex-wife as she ran off with the neighbor. So the fact is otherwise he'd have to sell his house and he'd have to give that. So the facts are very, very clear and very important that it is a really good idea to get a reverse mortgage for the vast majority of people the day you turn 62. And if you teach your clients how that works, and you teach your clients to plan on selling their old house, we raised 4 sons in a house that is 5,000 square feet with 6 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. What good do you think that does my wife and I now? I mean, we can't even find each other in the house anymore. I mean, it's ridiculous. We don't need 4 bathrooms. We don't need 6 bedrooms. We turned it into a bed and breakfast and a wedding venue for a while, but now it's for sale. I got an accepted offer last night on the house. So the issue is that house, now I'm going to get some money back, but guess what? I had to move to Minneapolis area by my kids, and now the next house that I'm in now is going to cost me more. So now I got more money tied up in equity, which is worthless unless I buy the house with a reverse mortgage. Which brings me to my next topic here. And you may find it strange that I'm going to show you a picture of the diaper aisle in Walgreens. Why in the heck would I show that to you? What does that have to do with real estate? I want you to check in the next time you go to Walgreens and you get pick up a prescription or go get some groceries or whatever on the way home. Take a look at the diaper aisle and take a look at how many are adult diapers and how many are baby diapers and how much shelf space they give to each of them. It's equal in almost every store you go into. There's just as many adult diapers as there are baby diapers. So you can be glad that we're done eating and everything, and this isn't a lunch deal. But think about that for a minute. Why is that? Why does Walgreens devote that much shelf space to adult diapers? Because this year it's anticipated that there will be more adult diapers sold than baby diapers. 2020 is the first time that the number of people over 65 exceeded the number of people under 5. The first time in the history of the country. There are more people over 65 than under 5, so there's not as many kids running around. Did you know that the realtors and the loan officers and the financial planners haven't quite figured that out yet? They're still catering to the millennials and chasing all the millennials and forgetting there's a whole bunch of gray-haired people like me that really are very, very valuable to the entire real estate market. And let me tell you one thing that is going to immediately increase your sales. Pay attention to the old people that come along with the millennials to look at the houses. I have 4 sons. 3 sons bought a house before I bought my house up here in Minneapolis. I waited until the 3rd son bought the house. Why? Because I didn't want to move by the kids and the grandkids and then have them move. So I wanted to make sure that they're putting roots down. And I'm incredibly fortunate because all 4 of my sons live within a 15-minute radius of me with their wives and the grandkids. And so that's really cool. So I went to all 3 showings, several showings with my sons and their wives. And here I drive into the showing with with my kids. I pick up my granddaughter and carry her into the house. I've got Wisconsin plates out there. And guess how many real estate agents asked me a very simple question. Do you plan on moving to Minneapolis area to be by your kids? Looks like you really love that little granddaughter, that cute little 3-year-old granddaughter. Yeah, she's like the best granddaughter ever. So are you thinking about moving up here? Not one real estate agent asked me that question. Not one. And I ended up buying a house that was twice the value of whatever one my kids bought. But all 3 of those realtors had their first shot at me and they said nothing. Totally lost the sale. So I called up my Fairway loan officer and I said, hey, do you know any realtors that know, that like to deal with old people with gray hair? And he said, yeah, I got just one. Susan's awesome. In fact, she's got gray hair herself. Now, you don't have to have gray hair to take care of us old people. You just have to pay attention and like old people and like, talking to them. And we answer voicemails, by the way. Sometimes we even leave voicemails. You don't have to just text us. We actually like to pick up the phone and talk to you, weird things like that. And so anyhow, I called up and he said, and he said, yeah, Susan's perfect. Susan showed me about, 15 houses. We put an offer and bought it a year ahead of the time that we thought before we even sold our house in Wisconsin. And then she said, you told me that 3 of your 4 sons bought a house. What about the 4th one? Oh yeah, Josh is getting married in a couple of months. He canceled his wedding and they're just getting married in our backyard. And she said, well, don't they want to get a house? They moved out of their apartment. They're living in your basement. Do you want them to live in your basement forever? And I said, well, no, they want to buy a house. They just moved out because of COVID, because they hated downtown Minneapolis. And there were some other things going on in downtown Minneapolis. So they moved out of there. And so she finds a house for Josh and Bridget, and they close on it 3 months ago. She gets 2 sales that the other real estate agents did not get because of one simple thing. She understood reverse mortgages, and she understood the whole life cycle of how a house can be a really good investment. Did you know that I can buy an $800,000 house for no more than $400,000 down? It is one of the coolest, most fantastic deals in real estate. It's called H for P, HECM for purchase, reverse for purchase. And there's a whole bunch of people that don't like that. So we are dealing with an incredible perfect storm. Let me tell you a little bit about us baby boomers. We didn't save very well. 2/3 of us do not have enough money to get to retirement, and over 70% of us are going to live into our 90s. I want you guys that are younger, I can't see everybody, but there's a lot of young people here. I want you to work your butts off, because you're going to be paying for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid for us for the next 40 years. So work your butts off, because we're going to need you. So that's crazy, because we haven't saved correctly. But guess what? We have more real estate than any generation before us. We own $8 trillion of home equity. 8 trillion. It's the largest asset class in the country. It's more than 401ks, IRAs, everything else. It's fantastic. And yet there's a whole bunch of us that aren't ready for retirement. And here we got the lowest return on investment for decades. Remember, I paid 16.5 for my first house. That's when my dad retired. My dad was earning between 15 and 20% on his money, and it wasn't hard money. That was CDs. You could get 15% on a CD back in 1981. That was incredible. He could make more on $200,000 than what I can make on $1 million in 2021 as compared to 1981. Whole different world. This is not your father's or your grandfather's retirement. And how important is it? And I see that the slide didn't get updated because last week it went up to $8 trillion. But anyhow, the fact is this: there's a whole ton of us that need your help. And there's a whole ton of people that do not understand how mortgages work and how reverse mortgages work. And if you understand that, you'll even be able to help out 40 and 50-year-olds. This is the life cycle of why real estate is a good investment. It's very simple. Everybody that owns a house has 3 buckets of wealth. Bucket 1 is the client's bucket. Their ability to make money, commissions, own a business, whatever, and they make money in bucket 1 and they send it up to their top retirement wallet. And the top retirement wallet is that little green bar on the top, and most of the money evaporates right off the top. And you spend it on food and clothes and cars and kids' tennis shoes and all of this other kind of stuff. However, you try to save maybe 5% of your income and you put it down into bucket 2. That's a financial planner's bucket. And they put the money in 401ks and IRAs. And then in the future, you want that for retirement money. But guess what? The vast majority of people that you deal with and that I deal with put 30 to 40% of their income into bucket 3, into houses. We manage more money and more cash flow as real estate agents and as loan officers than the financial planners. Some financial planners think they're really cool, but we've got more assets under management than they do. It's really important how much money's going into real estate. And so people are willing, because they think that this is a good investment, they pour in hundreds of thousands of dollars into bucket 3. And they should, but they should not plan on leaving it there. Now let's go down to the 62 and up crowd, the bottom wallet. Now I've retired. I haven't retired. I like to work, and so I'll probably work into my 80s because it's fun stuff. But some people can't work, don't want to work, whatever, and they get down into post-retirement down on the bottom wallet. And the money coming in from bucket 1 isn't the same anymore. It's decreased. Maybe it went to 0 except for their Social Security. So what do? They walk into their financial planner's office in bucket 2 and say, hey, need some money. I'm retired now. We're going on vacation. We're going on a Viking River cruise because we all got vaccinated. We're heading over to Europe. So we want to go on a Viking River cruise. We need $10,000. And they pull that $10,000 out of bucket 2. Why don't they ask for the money out of bucket 3? They gave us hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why did they go to their nest egg first, which is earning between 7 and 8%, including the Great Depression for the last 100 and some years? They don't go to their real estate, which has appreciated like Larry's from 40,000 to 500,000 in 40 years. They don't go ask us for their money back. They just continue paying in. 44% of people over the age of 62 are still making a mortgage payment because they think they have to. It's programmed in. They think they have to make a mortgage payment. I purposely paid my real estate down very slowly. I've got half my net worth in real estate. I obviously believe in it. Commercial real estate, second homes, my primary residence. I'm really big on real estate. I think it's been one of the best things that I've done. But the fact is, unless I can turn that into income, like you can turn an investment property into income, it's worthless. All I can do is go to a party and brag about the fact. I worked with a client that had $2 million in their investment real estate, but they couldn't even go out for a Friday night fish fry. They didn't have any money because everything was going into roofs and it was going into everything else. They had them all paid for, but oh man, everything was plowing back into it and they had to replace this and replace that. And then they got sued from this tenant and they lost that income. I mean, they were like living like paupers and they were worth $2 million because they did not understand leverage. So the fact is that there's a whole bunch of clients out there that think they have to continue to pile money into bucket 3 instead of taking it out. Now, I purposely bought a house that's more expensive than I would have bought if I'm not going to do a reverse mortgage in a year. If I wasn't doing a reverse mortgage in a year, I would have bought a cheaper house because I know that if eventually I want to slow down, I don't want to work as hard or as much, or I want to work for fun, that I would not want to make a house payment. So I don't believe that anybody should have a house payment after they hit 62, but everybody, almost everybody, should have a mortgage when they hit 62, an optional payment mortgage, a mortgage that you can make payments on or not, hence a reverse mortgage. Now, will I die with less equity? Will my kids get less equity when I die? Absolutely, they will get less equity because I'm using money out of bucket 3. But when I pull $10,000 for that Viking River cruise out of my good real estate investment, my great real estate investment, how much money stays in bucket 2? $10,000 of cash. So I will die with less equity, but more cash because I understand how to use equity instead of brag about it and talk about it and let it sit in my house doing absolutely nothing. And that makes me very excited about real estate. And because of that, Susan got double the commission because I bought a more expensive house because I could buy it for half price. You can buy an $800,000 house by putting $400,000 down and never have a payment for the rest of your life. That is very significant and an absolute unbelievable number of real estate agents and loan officers and financial planners do not understand what I just told you. And they will tell you that you just pay off your house, get rid of your payment and leave it sit there and never touch it. I've got an unbroken string for 18 years of asking that question. It could be broken tonight because sooner or later it's going to happen, but I'm going to ask all of you a very simple question. Have you ever been to a funeral or been to a graveyard and saw a tombstone or a plaque on a casket or maybe a little sign next to a casket that said, I died with $386,000 in home equity? Has anybody ever saw that? I never have. Nobody that has ever talked to has ever saw that. So why does everybody live their life like the Holy Grail, the sacred cow, is to make sure that you die with the most equity that you possibly can have in your house? If you die with the most equity in your house, you have had guaranteed less enjoyment. You've had a crappier retirement. You've taken less vacations. You've done less fun things with your kids. I guarantee you, show me anybody that's got a paid off house that dies with it and they had less fun and were not as efficient as they could have been. I don't care how much money they have. We deal with people that have, we're dealing with some right now that have $5, $6, $8, $10 million and they're doing a reverse mortgage. Not because they have to, but because it makes more sense to pull money out of bucket 3 than to pull it out of bucket 2. And people say, oh, wait, real estate really goes up. You should pay off your real estate. Real estate will go up whether it's paid off or not. It's the power of leverage. That's what you guys as investors understand, is you use leverage. Even if you have to pay extra for hard money, you pay extra. That's wonderful. That's powerful, and it should be used. And then people don't use it on their own house because they're scared to death of a payment. Well, they should be, because it's not a good idea to have a payment in retirement. But if you have a mortgage that does not require a payment until a year after you're dead, it doesn't get any better than that. Why do people not want to use it? If you walked into a bank and said, hey guys, I want to borrow some money, but I don't want to pay it back until a year after I'm dead, they're going to laugh their butts off at you and throw you out the door. If you walk into our office, we're going to say, awesome, you just got to be 62, or you got to marry somebody that's 62. And John says, I'm not 62 yet. Well, you're going to have to find a wife who's over 62, and then you're in. But the bottom line is that as long as you're over 62, you can walk into any Fairway office and say, I want a mortgage and I don't want to pay it back until a year after I'm dead. And I want it to be a really low interest rate, like 3%. Can you do that for me? Yes, we can. So you very low interest rate. So you only spend 3% of your equity every year. And usually your house goes up by a lot more than that. But if it doesn't matter because you're protected. And then at the end, let's take a look at the end game. What happens at the end? You're either upside down or you're right side up. So I lived through 2008. A lot of people were upside down when they died. That was a bad year to die if you were trying to pass your real estate on to your kids. Because in 2008, 2009, the house that was worth $500,000 was all of a sudden worth $300,000 if you could sell it at all. We dealt with one reverse mortgage in Las Vegas. That was the condo was worth $200,000 and it sold for $50,000 after the person died. So that's a pretty big loss. That's a 75% loss to be exact. So the issue is how much did that cost his heirs? He owed $125,000 on his reverse mortgage, and it went from $200,000 down to $50,000 on this little condo. How much did his heirs owe? Nothing. It was covered by the Federal Housing Administration. But then what happens when I just had somebody die last month? Their house went up in value from $300,000 when I did the mortgage to $700,000. Incredibly huge jump. Boise, Idaho. And they only owed $150,000 on the house. That's all they used. So you take $700,000, you subtract $150. How much did the kids get? $550. So if it's good, the money goes to the children when you sell it. If it's bad, the bill goes to FHA and they will pay your commission. They'll pay the title company. They'll pay everybody else. And the kids owe nothing. So if it's upside down, FHA covers the bill. If it's right side up, the kids get the whole inheritance of whatever's left or whoever's inheriting it. So why is everybody afraid of or scared of reverse mortgages? Because they always talk about the negative equity. We're going to lose equity. Yes, you are. You're going to give up equity. You're going to lose equity in your left pocket. You're going to gain cash in your right pocket. So it's a trade-off. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You got to do one or the other. You can't say, I've got my house paid off free and clear and not use any of the money. So if you turn your equity into cash, it makes it much simpler. Now, how does this relate to you as far as your business? First of all, if you explain this correctly, if I rolled into Portland and I said, yep, my kids moved out here and I'm going to need to buy a house. And I rolled in there with $300,000 that I brought from my house in Wisconsin. And that could have happened. My son went to law school at the University of Oregon in Eugene, and there's a very good possibility that he could have ended up being out there because he really liked going to Bend for the weekends and skiing and everything else and loved hiking all the trails. I mean, he loved Oregon and ended up coming back to Minneapolis. But anyhow, the bottom line is what happens if I move out to Oregon and I walk into your office or call you on the phone or whatever, and I say, hey, I'm a big deal. I'm a cash buyer. Just sold my 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in Wisconsin, and I got $300,000 in cash. Jacob, I want you to take me out and show me some nice properties. I want at least 2,500 square feet. Be nice if it was on some water, or at least a view of some water. And if you got a lake, that's okay too, because after I'm a cash buyer. And I want it to be in good shape, no fixer-uppers. I mean, I don't know how to do that kind of stuff. I'm paying cash for it. I don't want a payment because I'm retired. I'm going to, take care of my grandkids out here. How excited are you going to be to just take me around and start showing me $300,000 houses while I just gave you an impossible situation? But if you see, I got gray hair.
Luck.
Yeah, good luck. You might tell me to head out quite a bit further. Maybe a lot further than Bend, because that's hot too. So the issue is, by the way, I have fond memories of Bend. My wife was giving me a hard time because I said, I'm going to write a book on reverse mortgages because people just don't understand them. And I said that so many times that she was irritated with me. And so she said, how long would it take you to write a book? And I said, I don't know. I could probably get it done in a week if I did nothing else. And she said, okay, we're going to take you on vacation. She called up my son. She said, where's a good place in Oregon to write a book? And he said, oh, it'd be perfect. It's Bend. So we went and rented a house in Bend, and I sat there for 7 days and I wrote the book. And anybody that's on this call, you're welcome to get a copy of the book. You can buy it on Amazon for $20, or you can get it from us for free. So you let us know which one you want to do. That's an intelligence test to see what you want to pay for the book. Anyway, bottom line is that if I came out there with $300,000, you're not going to be able to do much for me at all. You're going to have to convince me that I need a mortgage, which I don't want a mortgage payment. And so I'm going to be very disappointed and even upset with you that you can't find anything when I think I'm a big deal cash buyer and I don't understand what the market is like. However, all you got to do is take a look at my gray hair and say, were you born before 1959? Or are you kind of in that age bracket? Did you know, Harlan, that you can get a house for half price? If you give me $300,000, I can go to Fairway, get the other $300,000. We can find you a $600,000 house. How do you like that? Well, that's too good to be true. No, that's really the way it is. You do have to pay it back, but it's a year after you're dead. So you can live there as long as you want. And if you're upside down, that's okay, because you won't have to pay it. And if you're right side up, the kids get whatever's left at the end. That's just what I just gave you was the sales presentation for a reverse mortgage. It's not real complicated. It's very simple. Well, I don't like reverse mortgages. Well, okay. Do you like forward mortgages? That requires a payment of $1,342 a month for the next 30 years until you're 92. Would that be a better option for you? Because that's really if you want this house. Otherwise, you're going to have to get this fixer-upper, or maybe we can get you a trailer house in a park or something like that. So it gives a pretty clear, obvious situation. You're kidding. So I can live in a $600,000 house. I only have to put down 300 grand, and I don't have to worry about anything until a year after I'm dead or until I move out of the house. Does it get any better than that? No, it doesn't. It's absolutely amazing that people don't get more excited about that, because they should. So let's talk about how that affects. By the way, if you ever have a question, we'll send you this slide and you can put it up. That's how many people are in the baby boomer group. So pay attention to us, because there's quite a few of us. It's not that I got an identity crisis. I'm mad that people like millennials better than us. I just think it's crazy that people look at the millennials on the left side of the screen and think that their business rises and sets with the millennials. Look at all those people over there. And about 1 out of 4 to 1 out of 3 of us are going to sell a house and buy a house just like me within the next 5 years. So that's a listing and a sale. I just heard how it's really difficult to get listings. I hear that everywhere in the country. People beg for listings. Well, I was in Denver a couple of years ago. Things were still very difficult there, and now it's even worse. But a realtor came to my seminar, and she said, you know something, I know exactly what I'm going to do. And I said, what are you going to do? And she said, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'll tell you in 6 months, because I don't want anybody else to know about it. So she went to an area in Denver. She told me about it 6 months later. She was pretty fired up about it. She went to an area in Denver and where there was 2-story houses that were kind of, they were a little bit run down. So she knocked on the door only from 9 to 3, because that's when the retired people were at home. She'd knock on the door and say, hi, I'm, her name was Jill. I'm Jill, and I live in this area. And a lot of your neighbors have thought about moving out of a 2-story house as they get older. Have you ever thought about moving out of this 2-story house? That's a great question, because everybody who's over 60 has thought about moving out of a 2-story house. Not because they're frail, but they know that sooner or later they might not be able to stay in a 2-story house. So the bottom line is, is that she got 4 people to list their 2-story house. But not until she told, within 6 months, but not until she told them the story. Because they said, no, we don't want to sell our house because we see of the prices of everything else. And she said, have you ever thought about moving to Todd Creek? Because Todd Creek up in Thornton is a cool 55+ community that a ton of people like to move to. Well, yeah, but the houses up there are $600,000-$700,000. We can't afford that. We'll have a payment. We got this house paid off. So no, we really don't want to list this house because we don't like the price we're going to have to pay for the next house. And she said, I can list your house and I'll net you about $400,000. Then we'll take you up to Todd Creek And there's a Fairway representative that's going to come along with me that's a loan officer, and she will give you a loan for double the amount of money that I've got right here. So if you want an $800,000 house, well, you don't need an $800,000 house, but that'll cost you $400. If you want a $700,000 house, it's $350. If you want one of their smaller houses, you can get a $600,000 house for $300. You're kidding. So I can sell this house for $400. I can buy a $600,000 house up in the 55 plus community, and I never have to make a payment, and I can pocket $100,000. Really? I mean, it was unbelievable. 4 listings, 4 sales within a period of 6 months. Anybody can do the same thing. It is not that hard. Her income obviously increased dramatically over the 30%. So the fact is if you just take a look at those people on the right-hand side of the screen, it's pretty powerful. So this is really how simple it is. It's not that complicated. If you're 62, you do about a 50% down payment. If you're 72, you do a 40% down payment. If you're 82, you only need 30%. And that's and you say, well, that's kind of a big down payment. I mean, we can do a forward mortgage for 5% down or 10% down. Yeah, but then you have payments for the rest of your life. And that's not anywhere near the same. And most people my age have equity coming out of another house, or we've got money sitting around that we would be able to afford a 30, 40, 50% down payment. In fact, some people pay cash for a house. And the fact is when you're paying cash for a house, you buy a lot less house. That's why I would only want to get a $300,000 house when I walk into Jacob's office. I only want a $300,000 house because I don't want a payment. But I'll buy a $600,000 house if I only got to put 50% down. This just gives you a little bit of an idea. This is in our brochure also, just borrowing power at different ages and different home price points. So people say, well, I heard a reverse mortgage is expensive. I mean, you got all that ridiculous negative amortization. You got to put down this big down payment, and the closing costs are higher. You got to pay FHA mortgage insurance, which is 2% of the value of the house. $600,000 house, that it means that you're paying $12,000 in mortgage insurance. You're not really paying it. You're giving it up in equity, but however you figure it. So I still, these are the 3 ways to buy a house. I can pay 20% down, and then I can pay all these payments of $2,100 for the next however long till I'm 90s. And I will pay $897,000 for that house. For a $600,000 house, I end up paying $900,000 because obviously I got to pay all that in interest. Where's that money going to come from? How big of an IRA do I have? How big of a pension do I have? Probably no pension at all. So that's an extremely important issue to be aware of. Now, I can pay cash for the house. I can come up with $600,000, but now I lose a whole bunch of money in my investments because I wanted to go on vacations. I wanted to have fun with the kids, the grandkids. I wanted to do stuff. And now I can't because I put all the money into the house and I got a whole bunch of illiquid cash. So when people understand that, oh, okay, so I can actually buy the house, I have my cake and eat it too. I can live in that house. But at the same time, I get to only put down that $306,000, get the rest of it in a loan and never make a payment. And on top of it, for wealthier people, I can use this for people that have money in IRAs. They don't have to be super wealthy, somewhere between $200,000 and $1,000 and $1 million in their IRA. You can get a huge tax write-off if you buy a house with a reverse mortgage. And most people don't even understand that you can save a bunch of money in taxes. So this just keeps getting better. This is like the Ginzu knives commercial. And we give you 4 of them and the shipping is free. And if you buy another set, it just kind of keeps getting better. So it really is very difficult to understand why people aren't a bit more excited about. So here's some examples. These are obviously couples that they're not fictitious, but their names are changed. So Jim and Mary, they're both 65. They want to move to a newly constructed home to retire. And they realize that home values are more. So they sell their little $197,000 house and they could move to a $400,000 house for only $197,000 down. Sell their house for $197,000, buy the brand new house with no maintenance for $400,000. Cindy, 70, she's downsizing. And I'm going to give you another tip right here. If you want to if you want to find an unusual source of leads for listings and sales at the same time, go make friends with a divorce attorney. And you say, wow, that's kind of like chasing ambulances or something. How many of you, is there anybody on this call that regularly talks to a divorce attorney, family law attorney, whatever you want to call it? Anybody?
Yes.
Awesome. We've got one. Cool.
Yes.
All right. Keep doing that, because here's the deal. I don't know if you've ever heard of gray divorce or silver divorce, but our generation is divorcing at a rate double any other demographic area. And there's more money involved with people that get divorced in their 60s and 70s. There usually is always one sale and one or often two purchases, depending upon the situation. So you want to be there to be able to help those people, because guess what they do? They go and pay cash for a house, a smaller house that they don't even like, because now there's only one income instead of two. And it's hard to qualify them because they're on Social Security and they don't have enough money. And we qualify them easily because the payment is always, does anybody know what the payment is on a reverse mortgage? It's always zero. Yeah, exactly. It's always zero, no matter what the situation is. And so obviously I pay taxes and insurance. Let's not forget about that. You still own the house. You got to pay taxes and insurance, but the payment, the mortgage payment, is zero. So if Cindy is 70 and there's a divorce situation involved here, and she owns it free and clear, and she wants to move closer to her grandchildren, she can downsize and have some extra money. Or if her husband, ex-husband, wants to sell the other house and give her $200,000, she can still go get the $400,000 house if she's only got $200,000. She won't pocket as much money, of course, because now she got the money from the divorce settlement and that went into it. But she still has all of her IRAs and everything else, all of her cash, because she hasn't used any of her cash. She's only used the equity from the house and the divorce. So downsizing and upsizing, it all depends on what the client wants. So why do people move? Number one, they want to move close to family. And that's why you want to be, every single time that you sell to a millennial, always ask them the same question. How are your mom and dad doing? Have your mom and dad ever thought about moving? Do they live here? Because there's two sets of couples for every millennial couple that you get. Just ask them, because the number one reason that we want to move is because we want to be close to family. We don't necessarily like our kids that much, but we love our grandchildren. And you talk to us about our grandchildren, I'll stop everything. I don't care how busy I am. You want to see pictures? I'll show you pictures right now of Lauren and Piper. They are really cool kids. And then we've got twins, Casper and Loie. And I mean, they're the smartest 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds that you're ever going to see. I'll put them up against anybody's kids or grandkids. You want to impress a grandparent, start asking them about their grandkids. It used to irritate me because I dealt with reverse mortgages for I don't know how long. And they'd always tell me how smart their kids were and how good looking their kids were. And they'd show me these pictures and everything. I said, actually, your kid looks like any other kid. No, you don't say that. But the bottom line is that talk to them about their grandchildren. And if you see grandchildren, find out where the grandparents are, because they might want to move by their grandkids. They might be retiring in a year or two. And just like me, even though I didn't have my other house sold, I want to buy a house close to the kids so that last night I could run 15 minutes and go have dinner and push my little granddaughter on the swing for a while. That's what we want to do, because they grow up so fast. We want to see that them grow up. We want to spoil them with candy and, birthday presents on Sunday when I go over there and everything else. If I live 3 hours away or 5 hours away, I can't do that kind of stuff. I can't go over there for a couple hours in the evening. So that's the number one reason. Constantly look for those scenarios. So that is a huge selling opportunity to be able to find that. Some people want to reduce home expenses. They do want to sell their big house and buy a smaller house. Be looking for that, just like the lady in Denver did. Change in health status. That's a huge issue. One of the realtors that we work with, called brucesteam.com, he's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He's got one young millennial realtor that works for him, and then him and his wife are my age. And they take people that have health problems, sell their house, list their house. Austin, the young guy, sells it. And then they even get a kickback from the assisted living where people go. Well, there's two moves in our lifetime. The first move is when we downsize, get out of the family house and get into the house where we really want to be, like the house that I'm in now, that's all in one level and is designed for people like us. We've only got 3 bedrooms because we don't need that many bedrooms anymore. Our kids aren't at home. So that's the scenario of what we do on the other side of the equation. And change in marital status, I talked to you about the divorce situation. That's 12% of the reason. It's a pretty big reason. And then, of course, empty nesting, the kids are out and just wanting the cash. So we know that 1 out of 4 are going to be moving within the next while, and only 51% are going to buy the same size. I'm sorry, are going to go downsize. 19% are actually going to get a larger home, and 30% are going to get a same size house. So let's go into some of the basics real quick for the purpose of, and we're kind of down to like the last 10 minutes that I'm going to be covering. And then I want to make sure that we got a little bit of time if you have questions. Let's talk about the basics. You got to be over 62. It's got to be an FHA qualified home. It's not difficult to get a house to qualify FHA, but the peeling paint is an issue, broken windows. But the vast majority of people like us do not want to move into a fixer-upper, and very rarely do our houses not pass the FHA qualifications. You got to live in the home for more than 6 months a year. It's got to be your primary residence. You can have other homes, but you got to live there 6 months out of the year. And it will never affect Social Security and Medicare benefits unless you are on Medicaid. If your client's on Medicaid, they should still do a reverse mortgage, but they should do it differently. You keep the title to your home. We don't take over the value of the house. All kinds of people say, oh yeah, I lost the house. I got a reverse mortgage. No, it's still your house. It's funny because I was talking Northern California, Napa Valley area, a very sharp professor that we work with, Dr. Barry Sachs, friend of mine. He's done a ton of research. He has his own reverse mortgage up in Napa. He's got another house in San Francisco, two of the most expensive areas in the world. And in the process, he's got a reverse mortgage on his primary residence. And he said, I would have never thought about having 2 properties if it wasn't for that. But he said, you know something? Even though I owe 40% of the value on a reverse mortgage, because I've had it now for 20 years, I owe 40% of the value, even though the value of the house went up. But you know something? When I walk into my house, I can use 100% of the house. It's not like an IRA that I lost 40% of the investment. I've still got 100% of the house, even though I owe 40% of it on a mortgage. And it doesn't matter. I mean, that's pretty darn cool. So think about it that way. Basic credit and income qualifications is much easier to qualify for a reverse than it is for a forward, because the payment is always 0. And that's a huge issue. The cash is always tax-free, can be used as a tax deduction, which that's the really cool thing. And that is kind of the magic bullet that I'm going to give you in just a couple of minutes. That is a huge reason for people to not pay cash and buy a more expensive home if they have, wealth and the ability to take care of the house. It's never a monthly payment. You're still responsible for maintenance, taxes, and insurance, just like if the house was paid off. And there's no required repayment until the last living borrower permanently leaves the house. So if I die, my wife can still stay there. If she dies, I can still stay there, or I can choose to sell it. It doesn't matter. You really want to think it's a little bit like a Swiss Army knife. There's just a whole bunch of options of how you can do it. You can never owe more than the home value. I covered that. If it's upside down, FHA pays the difference, and you nor your children are liable for it if you're not alive. And of course, you can purchase a home for 50 to 70%. Now, if you already own a home and you're buying a second home, you can pull money out for a lump sum. I had one person that pulled money out. One of our clients pulled money out and bought an investment property. Another client pulled the money out and bought a second home. So always ask people, where's the money come from? Because that will help you make other real estate sales besides the primary residence. You can set up a line of credit and pull the money out whenever you want. I had a real estate agent in South Carolina that had a paid off house, and she said, I don't want a mortgage payment. I said, that's fine. You don't need a mortgage payment because you'll have a reverse. And she used that money to flip houses and pulled out money out of the line of credit, bought a house, paid it off, never required a payment. And so she didn't have a hard money loan. She did 3% loan every time she wanted to do some flips on the house. You can also take out a monthly check. So we can turn your house. This is where you want to explain to people, we can turn your house into an investment. You should buy a more expensive house because the more expensive your house, the bigger your check will be at the end. When you turn 62, you can start pulling money out. You've been putting money in all these years. Now you can take it out. The bigger the house, the bigger the check. So don't buy the cheapest house on the block. I told all my kids, buy just about as high as what you can afford. Because if the house values go up by 5%, 10%, you get a lot bigger chunk back. And it's all leveraged because you guys as kids only have to put down 5%, 10%. That's awesome. You don't have to put down 100%. And if the property goes up, you'll get more money back than what you put down as the down payment. So you can mix and match these, and you can use some money to go on vacation. You can use some money to buy another house or put a down payment on another house. You can use some money to leave in the line of credit, or you can get a monthly check. It's up to you, whichever way you want to go. Okay, and this tells a little bit about the scenario on the growth in the line of credit. I won't go into much details. So property eligibility, 1 to 4 properties, manufactured homes built after 1976. Condos have to be approved separately. Planned unit developments are fine. Townhouses, any property held in a living trust except for Texas, which you guys don't have to worry, you're quite a ways away from Texas. There's some idiosyncrasies to a reverse mortgage loan. You can't do any lender credits. We can't give them any money. You can't give them any money. And the seller cannot give them any money. But the seller can pay for the title insurance, the home warranty, and any transfer taxes and those kind of things that are required. But there is no seller contribution, not seller's market. They don't need to give money away anyway. If the home inspection is listed on the purchase contract, we need all the pages. And so a lot of people kind of, you know, depending upon the state, just don't talk about the purchase contract, but we don't care. We're not trying to tell you to commit fraud. Every state's a little bit different, but we just want you to know if a home inspection is done, we want to see every page as part of the underwriting process. Builders, that is a huge scenario. If any of you are working with builders, get going with some builders because it's a big deal. Builders it's easier for them to sell the brand new houses, just like the example I used in Denver and Thornton in North Denver. So we do financial assessment. We do not use DTI. A lot of people say, well, what kind of credit score you have to have? We don't care if you got a credit score or not. A lot of our clients don't even have a credit score. We don't underwrite according to credit score. We underwrite according to whether or not they paid their property taxes, because that's what we're concerned about. If they don't pay their property taxes, we have to foreclose. If you foreclose on old people, it doesn't look good. It's okay to foreclose on young kids, but don't foreclose on an old person. If if the USA Today starts taking pictures of crying old people outside their houses, it doesn't work well in the media. So we don't want to foreclose on old people. And so we make sure that we do the financial assessment to make sure they can afford to pay the taxes, and make sure they can afford to pay the insurance. And so sometimes we even put a set aside for the taxes depending upon the situation. So FHA administers the program. We also do jumbo loans, which FHA does not guarantee, but it's guaranteed by the lender, and those go up to $4 million. So if you're over the FHA limit, which is currently $822,000, then if you got a $2-3 million house, then we go to a proprietary mortgage. We look at the age, we look at the current interest rate. That's why it's such a great deal right now, because interest rates are low, and the value of the home up to the maximum. This is 765. That's an old slide. It's actually 822. So I'm not going to go. We already went through some of these scenarios before, so I'm not going to go through that. But let's do a little quick scenario here. What is your opinion of reverse mortgages before and after? Did we get you all to number 3? Anybody still, I don't think they're good, or they're only okay for a few people? The fact that, what's that? Go ahead.
I'm just still trying to wrap my mind around it. You know, it's a reverse mortgage. So, you know, I'm trying to think about it from the counter perspective of no payment anymore. It's an interesting perspective. So I personally have certainly been moved more towards I will get one when I'm old enough. But yeah, this has been very, very interesting. A lot to think about.
Well, it will take you some time. And like I say, you may have, the book is an easy read. It takes 3 hours and it's large print and that kind of thing. So it's specifically designed to be an easy book. But this is what I really want to be able to shift you from. I didn't do an official poll because we didn't have a big group here tonight, but as a real estate professional, number one, do you almost always talk to your senior clients about reverse mortgages, or you only talk to them when you think there might be a need because they got bad credit, or do you never talk to them? There isn't any question if you want to make 30% more money that you do number one. You always talk to them about it. Hey, if you're a veteran, we talk about VA loans. If you're a first-time home buyer, we talk about bond loans and payment assistance programs. If you're got white hair, you want to talk about a reverse mortgage. That should just be part of your normal situation, not because we want you to sell loans for us. Yes, we appreciate that, but to increase your business. And at the same token, you are also doing something that none of your other competitors are doing. You're making a difference for that client and changing their lives. Do you think it's different if I roll into town and I go to Jacob and he gets me a $600,000 house instead of a $300,000 house? You think for exactly the same amount of cash layout? I mean, am I more impressed or less impressed with Jacob? I'm going to refer all my friends to him. Hey, come out and move by us because Jacob told me about this deal. And really, I'm not kidding you. You pay $300,000 and I got a $600,000 house. Come on, we'll show you. You can stay in one of the bedrooms. You know, that's the kind of thing that is a huge advantage. And so these are the things that people think about reverse mortgage. The banks take the house. They're too expensive to consider as a solution unless things are really bad. My kids are going to end up with a big problem. It's going to screw up their inheritance, or they're risky and dangerous. These are the safest mortgages. They're overregulated. They're a Federal Housing Administration loan. They're 3% interest rates. I mean, it's crazy. And they're not too expensive. You pay mortgage insurance, but it doesn't make any difference because that's not due until a year after you're dead either. And the bank does not take the house. You own it. And if the property goes way up in value, you get the kid, you or the kids get the difference. So there's so many people that say, oh, those closing costs are too high. It's too big of a down payment. I don't like FHA loans. It's just too complicated. I think I'll just pay cash. Or they didn't know they existed. Those are really the factors that goes into it. So I'm going to tell you the last one that I want to tell you about is, and if you want to contact me, just send an email to reverseevents@fairwaymc.com, and my staff will get a book off to you or get you in touch with any of our loan officer or anything else. So a question from Grant: what does happen in the event the housing value goes down? Let me go back to another slide. Oops, there we go. This is what a picture's worth 1,000 words. This is what a typical reverse mortgage looks like. Value of the home goes up, the green line. The orange line, the amount that you owe, also goes up. Now, we exaggerated this. We said, what happens if rates go to 6% and the house value only goes up by 2%? Then the line will cross sometime in your late 80s or 90s, and you will owe more on the house, the orange line, than the value of the home. But you won't owe it. FHA will owe it. So you burned up all of your equity. All the equity is gone, but you haven't made a payment for 40 years. So you don't care. You got everything out of the house. I only paid 300 grand. I don't care. But on the flip side of that, if the green line goes up faster and there's $200,000 worth of equity left, you get it. But if you die in a year like 2008, as I mentioned before, you die in a year like 2008 and the green line is down and the orange line is up and you owe more than what it's worth, you don't owe it. FHA owns it. And if you still want to stay living in the house, you're not kicked out. It's not that there's a margin call that, the line crossed, you got to get out. Values of houses are down, you got to get out. No, these are non-recourse. I've got a lady right now, 88. Her house is worth about $350,000. She owes $400. She called me up and she said, are you sure there's not a problem, Harlan? I got this 15 years ago. No, I understand you're in your 80s. You might have forgot, but remember, we've talked a couple of times. Don't worry about it. You won the game. You're already upside down. You've made no payments. The money that you took out belongs to you. And all of that other money, you know how much money she's got at 90 in her bucket too? Over $1 million. Doesn't have any equity left, but she doesn't care because she's got more cash. And her kids don't care either. I talk to her kids every once in a while. 2 of them are clients because the whole family is kind of excited about how this worked out for them. So long answer, short question, Grant. But let me tell you about one other scenario, and that is, well, let me go back to that same graph. Here's the other scenario. Look at the interest going up. Did you know that the only thing that is deductible, less than 10% of people deducted mortgage interest last year? Remember when we used to tell people you should buy a house so you could deduct mortgage interest? Yeah, that's not the case anymore. Less than 10% of people itemize above the $24,000. They don't get any benefit from the mortgage interest, whether you rent or whether you buy, because interest rates are so low and we got a $24,000 limit for couples to be able to itemize before it's worth anything. They don't even itemize. Old people like me don't either because they got their house almost paid off and they got small mortgages. Unless I go buy an expensive house, which is exactly what I did. And now I'm going to have a $400,000 reverse mortgage, and my payments are my interest that accrues every year, which I don't have to pay, is $12,000. But I don't have to pay anything. But guess what I'm going to do every 3 to 4 years? Pay the interest, because all of it will be deductible, because only acquisition indebtedness is deductible. Money that I've used to acquire a house. So if I've got a house paid off and I take a mortgage out on it, can't deduct it. But if I'm purchasing a house, that's acquisition indebtedness, and 100% of the interest is deductible when paid. And you say, well, Harlan, why would you want to pay $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 worth of interest when you don't have to? You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. Because if I pay interest on my mortgage, 100% of it can be pulled back out within 5 days. It's a line of credit. It's guaranteed. I pay 50 grand in, I pull 50 grand back out whenever I want, because I'm guaranteed that this line's going to go up no matter what. So my mortgage balance goes from 400 to 450. I write a check for 50,000. I can pull that $50,000 back out tax-free whenever I want to, because that's my money, and that is the equity that's available to me that can be turned into cash. Any of your wealthy clients who have their house paid off, next time you see them at a wedding or a cocktail party or birthday party, say, did you guys know that you could get a huge tax break on your IRA if you went and sold your older house and bought a brand new one? I can help you with that. I'll do the listing. There's a bunch of young people that want to buy your house. Get the heck out, and we'll put you over there in that 55 plus community, because some young people need your house. Get out. That's really the kind of scenario of what you want to look at, because it's the truth. What are we doing living in a 4-bedroom house? We just sold our house from somebody from Pullman, Washington, got an accepted offer last night. They're moving to Wisconsin because of the job situation. And they bought the house and they got 2 young kids, just like we used to have. That's what should have happened, is we list our house and somebody else buys it that's got a family. And now we're in a house that is set up for retirees and for occasionally having the kids and the grandkids over for a sleepover. So I could go on for another couple of hours. Terry told me I can't do the 3-hour CE. I've got some more slides that I can pull out, but that's basically the story. So remember the diaper aisle. There's a whole bunch of us old people. Pay attention to us. We're great customers. Number 2, make sure you are talking to every single one of your millennial buyers and sellers and asking them what's going on with mom and dad, because you will get a whole ton of listings. Make sure you understand the basics of the tax scenario. I can send you a white paper, 2-page white paper, which will be a chapter in my next book that explains how that tax situation works that I just went over very briefly. Make sure that you are looking and explaining to people, every person. When my son just closed a couple of months ago on his house, he's 31 years old. When him and Bridget closed, he said, well, Dad, just got started today on my reverse mortgage. And I said, you learned well, because he's going to pay down his house. And then when he turns 62 in 30 some years, he's going to be able to pull that money back out. He looks at that house that he just bought just like he looks at his 401k. It's an investment, and he's going to put money into it, and he's going to take it out when he gets older, because that's what a reverse mortgage does. We call it the 401k, 401 cabin. You can call it the individual retirement abode, whatever else. It's an investment for the future that you can pull the money back out. So why would you not want to use that money and look at it as an investment? That will encourage younger people and encourage people that are renters to buy a house. If you explain to them, did you know that you can put $200,000 into this house and you can probably get $500,000 back out because of the increase in value? And you don't have to move. You can just pull it out in cash, because we wave the magic wand over the equity and turn it into cash. Okay. The term of the reverse mortgage. The term of the reverse mortgage is it is due on your 150th birthday. So if you get to 150, you have to pay it back. We're going to kick you out at 150. That's the term of the mortgage. And I'm not joking on that. It's on the terms of the contract, your birthday. When you're 150 in 72 or whatever it is, that's when it's due back. So that's very reasonable terms. Any other questions?
If someone gets to that, they could probably just do a GoFundMe and get everyone to chip in.
Yeah.
Congrats on 150.
If somebody gets to 150, I mean, yeah, they will well publicize that. I do have a number of clients that are over 100.
That's awesome. I did actually have a quick question, and I think you kind of answered it, but just wanted to clarify. So if someone has, like you said, like $1 million worth of kind of either in their retirement accounts or whatever, something like that, basically the estate when they pass, that doesn't go towards the house at all?
Big brick wall between bucket 2 and bucket 3. My uncle died with his reverse mortgage, one of the first ones that I sold to my uncle. He was upside down by 40 grand. He had $300,000 in bucket 2 when he died at 94. He had a deficit of $40,000 roughly in bucket 3. FHA paid for that. The heirs got the other $300,000. It's non-recourse. You don't owe the loan. The house owes the loan. This is a collateral-based loan. You personally do not owe it. The house owes the loan. It's the only, you can get a commercial loan sometimes. It's collateral-based. But this is a loan that is a residential, the only residential government-guaranteed collateral-based loan in the country. So a huge difference.
Oh.
Great question.
Yeah, that is huge. And then one more question. This all sounds incredible to me, and I think it works really well. I want to talk to my parents about it because they're just about to be 62, and they thought the coolest thing in the world was paying off their home. And that might change because now they're looking at moving to San Diego, and that's twice the amount of money that they have in equity. So that is very interesting. But what would you say is the biggest? Yeah, well, that's crazy. What would you say is the biggest drawback to reverse mortgages?
The biggest single drawback is lack of understanding, because people tend to be, I covered that in with a chapter in my book on the bear in the closet. People think there's some, when I was a kid, I was scared and I would hear my dad snoring in the other room and I thought there was a bear in the closet. And my mom had to come in and comfort me and turn on the light and show me that there was no bear in the closet. A lot of people think there's a bear in the closet with a reverse mortgage. Somehow we're going to get beat. Somehow we're going to lose our house. It's too good to be true. Once we get past the understanding, there's two reasons why people don't like reverse mortgages. And it boils down to the same thing. It's cost. You're going to lose. You're going to give up equity. People don't like negative amortizing loans. For 40 years, they've seen their mortgage balance go down when they make payments. Now, every month they get a statement and it goes up. They say, wow, this is crappy. The number's going up. It doesn't matter because you have more cash. So you got to get past the fact that we don't care if we die with the most equity. We only care if we have cash while we live. And then kids can help out with that because I will always call the kids in and say, hey, kids, this is what's going to happen. Let's project 30 years into the future. Mom and dad pass away and you're at their funeral and you leave their funeral and you've inherited their house and you've inherited their IRA. Which one do you enjoy more? Because they can still sell the house and you guys can even get a tax deduction when you sell the house. But you have to get past that idea that it's going to cost me something. I'm going to lose equity because people put a higher value on this. If I show you these two things, you're going to say, well, I want this. But when we talk to 70-year-olds, they say, no, I want to hang on to my equity. I don't want your cash. They really tell us that. I'm going to hang on to my equity. And we're there to give them cash, but they don't want to because there's a cost to it. And that is a huge mental leap. I'll tell you a story that is very quick because I know we're running up against the time, but it's a fascinating story. I ran into this guy and he said, no, listen, Harlan, you're telling me that I can pull $300,000 out of this house and I never have to make a payment back for as long as I live. Are you sure? And I said, yes, that's absolutely correct. He said, well, let me tell you something. 45 years ago, I got married to my wife. And on our wedding night, you know what she told me? And I said, what did she tell you? And he said, she told me that if I ever sleep with another woman, she will divorce me and not give me a second chance. No questions about it. He said, I'm still married to her. So obviously I didn't sleep with another woman. And I'm thinking, what does this have to do with mortgages? And he said, the same year we bought a house. The banker told me, as long as you make a payment every single month, you will never lose your house and you'll be able to stay in your house. You know, you're telling me that I don't have to make a payment and I can stay in my house. The next thing you're going to be telling me is I can sleep around to my wife. I don't know about this deal. And he was kind of partially joking, but not really. We are beat into submission. I went to mortgage burning parties when I was 8 years old. If that doesn't permanently scar you about what a mortgage is, anything will. I literally went to mortgage burning parties. When people paid off their mortgage, there was a big barbecue and celebration in the backyard and burned the sucker. I mean, I thought that, wow, I'm never going to get one of those. I mean, people just want to burn them when they're done with them. So that is programmed into our DNA. And I wrote another chapter in the book called Sex, Drugs, and Reverse Mortgages. There's some bad things that have happened with reverse mortgages, and people can tell stories about them. There's bad things that have happened with sex and drugs too, but we are still kind of using them. And so the issue is that of course some bad things can happen, but what's the best part of which direction that you're going? So that's what your mom and dad are going to have a mental problem with, an emotional, psychological problem with. No, we want a paid off house. Do you want a paid off house or do you want to enjoy retirement? Which one do you want? Well, we can afford to pay it. Well, just because you can afford to pay it doesn't mean you should do that. I can afford to buy a Ferrari right now. Why would I buy a Ferrari? I'm just perfectly happy with my Ford Expedition. I don't really want to drive a Ferrari. So that's really the issue, is why are you paying money into bucket 3 when you don't have to? That's really what people need to understand. And that is a very difficult thing to get through because everybody's programmed that you do it this way. Pay off your house, pay off your house, pay off your house. That's the best deal. I'd love to talk to your mom and dad. I'd love to send them a book and just let them know that, hey, this move is a whole lot easier. And I can go through my own situation, moving out of central Wisconsin into an expensive suburb in Minneapolis to be by the kids. Double the home value.
Yeah. I like that.
Harlan, how do we get your book again?
Just send an email to reverseevents@fairwaymc.com. Let me run it down here. And I will make sure that I get that out to you guys, or I'll send a bunch to your office, Terry, and everybody can pick it up, whatever makes sense. But individually, it makes more sense to do it individually because everybody's scattered around. Nobody comes into offices right now. reverseevents@fairwaymc.com.
Got it.
By the way,
that's a lot of great information.
I hope that I kept everybody awake and interested and that you didn't have to drink too much coffee. Appreciate you guys for listening to the story.
Great stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Harlan. That was great.
Yep, very knowledgeable.
Fantastic.
Well, Harlan, thanks.
I've been doing this for 18 years, so I better know something about it. Get me off this topic. I'm not very smart, but I know quite a bit about this.
Good at this one.
We appreciate you. And guys, thanks for offering or talking to him about being our speaker. So appreciate you guys too. So
if I could, Terry, just one quick reminder, all events are still available on the website, Westside Investors Network, and the podcast, Westside Investors Network. AJ and Chris Shepard, it's a great resource for real estate professionals of all sorts.
Love it. Thank you so much, Taylor. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful evening and start thinking about who you can share this information with. Harlan, thanks again.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.